Welcome to Silent Screams, where darkness, whispers, and terror await you. Are you ready to confront your fears? Story 1, The Sinister Strings, a Haunted Doll Tale. When Mia turned 12, her grandmother gifted her a porcelain doll named Elysia. Its features were unervingly lifelike, glassy blue eyes that seemed to follow her, soft blonde curls cascading down its shoulders, and a pristine lace dress that shimmered like fresh snow. The doll had been in their family for generations. Her grandmother explained with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Take good care of Elysia," she said, voice trembling slightly. "She's special." Mia was skeptical at first. She had outgrown dolls and spent her days engrossed in books and her phone. Yet, something about Elysia intrigued her. Maybe it was the way the doll's delicate fingers seemed poised to move, or the faint, almost imperceptible scent of lavender that clung to its porcelain skin. She placed Elysia on a shelf in her bedroom, unaware of the curse she had just welcomed into her life. That night, Mia woke to a faint rustling sound. At first, she thought it was the wind. But her windows were shut. The noise grew louder, almost rhythmic, like soft footsteps pacing her wooden floor. Her eyes darted to the shelf where Elysia sat. The doll hadn't moved, or so it seemed. Probably just a dream, Mia muttered, pulling her blanket tighter. The next morning, she found Elysia on her desk. Her mother denied moving it, and Mia chalked it up to her own forgetfulness. But the incidents escalated. Books fell from shelves. Lights flickered. And Mia swore she heard faint giggles echoing from Elysia's direction. Her sleep grew restless, plagued by nightmares of being watched, her every move scrutinized by glassy blue eyes. Desperate for answers, Mia delved into the doll's history. Her grandmother reluctantly shared its origin. Elysia was created in the late 1800s by a reclusive dollmaker named Samuel Grayson. Grayson's only child, Elysia, had tragically drowned, and he crafted the doll in her image. Local legend whispered that he used forbidden rituals to bind Elysia's spirit to the porcelain figure, hoping to keep her alive. But something went wrong. The doll became a vessel for dark entities, its innocent appearance concealing malevolent intentions. "They say the doll chooses its owner," her grandmother whispered, clutching her rosary. "Once chosen, it doesn't let go." The house grew colder, its shadows darker. Objects moved without explanation. Mia's once peaceful room felt oppressive, as if unseen eyes lingered in every corner. Her friends stopped visiting after one of them claimed the doll blinked at her. One night, Mia awoke to find Elysia sitting at the foot of her bed, her head tilted unnaturally. Panicked, she threw the doll into the closet and locked it. Yet, when she woke the next morning, Elysia was back on the shelf, her glassy eyes shimmering with something close to amusement. Mia recorded herself sleeping, hoping to catch proof of what was happening. The footage was chilling. At 3:13 a.m., the doll's head turned toward the camera. Moments later, it climbed down from the shelf, its porcelain limbs moving with unsettling fluidity. The video ended with the camera toppling over. But the faint sound of whispering continued for several seconds. Convinced the doll was possessed, Mia sought help. Online forums led her to an occultist named Lydia, who specialized in cursed objects. Lydia warned her that destroying the doll could unleash its full wrath. The only way to sever its connection was to return it to its maker's resting place, a derelict mansion deep in the woods where Samuel Grayson had lived and died. Armed with salt, sage, and trembling courage, Mia ventured to the mansion. The journey was harrowing, the forest seemed alive. Its trees groaning and twisting as if trying to stop her. Inside the mansion, Elysia grew heavier in her arms, her cold porcelain burning Mia's skin. She found the dollmaker's workshop. Its walls lined with dozens of unfinished dolls, their eyeless faces frozen in silent screams. In the center of the room lay a rotting trunk etched with strange symbols. Following Lydia's instructions, Mia placed Elysia in the trunk, sprinkled the salt, and began the incantation. The air grew thick, and a guttural voice echoed around her. "She's mine," it snarled. The trunk shook violently, and shadows coalesced into a towering figure with hollow eyes. Mia continued chanting, tears streaming down her face. With a deafening roar, the spirit was sucked into the trunk, which slammed shut with a finality that left the room deathly silent. Mia burned the mansion to the ground, ensuring no trace of the curse remained. For the first time in months, she felt free. Elysia was gone, and her nightmares ceased. But miles away, in a dusty thrift shop, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing at a porcelain doll with glassy blue eyes and a pristine lace dress. "She's beautiful," he said. The shopkeeper smiled, her voice trembling slightly. "Take good care of her. She's special." Story 2, The Cursed Doll, Lydia's Lament. The sun had barely risen when Emily stumbled upon the estate sale. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just an escape from the monotony of her days. The house was ancient, its facade weathered and overgrown with ivy. Inside, every creak of the floorboard seemed to whisper secrets of a forgotten past. Emily's attention was drawn to a dusty glass cabinet tucked away in a dimly lit corner. Inside sat a doll, its porcelain face cracked in places but still eerily beautiful. The doll's glassy blue eyes seemed to follow her every move, and its meticulously crafted dress, once vibrant, was now faded and tattered. "Ah, you've got a good eye," the seller said, appearing from the shadows. "That one's special. They say it's haunted, but that's just nonsense to drive up the price. If you like it, I'll let it go for $20. Emily hesitated. The doll unnerved her, but something about it compelled her to buy it. She handed over the money, tucked the doll into her bag, and headed home, unaware of the dark presence she'd just invited into her life. From the moment Emily placed the doll on her bedroom shelf, strange things began to happen. It started small. Objects went missing, her car keys, a favorite necklace, but they always turned up in odd places, like under the doll's stand. At night, Emily would hear faint whispers, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Then, things escalated. She woke one morning to find scratches on her arms. Her cat, normally calm and affectionate, hissed at the doll and refused to enter the room. Emily dismissed these incidents as coincidences. But deep down, a gnawing fear began to take root. One night, as she lay in bed scrolling through her phone, the lamp on her bedside table flickered and went out. In the darkness, she thought she heard a giggle, a child's laugh, high-pitched and chilling. Emily's breath hitched as she reached for the flashlight on her phone. When the light illuminated her room, the doll was no longer on the shelf. It was sitting at the foot of her bed. Desperate for answers, Emily decided to research the doll. She combed through online forums and stumbled upon a thread discussing haunted objects. To her shock, a photo of her doll appeared in one of the posts. The doll, she learned, was known as Lydia. According to the Post, Lydia belonged to a young girl in the 1920s who suffered a tragic death. The story varied. Some claimed the girl was murdered by a jealous sibling. Others said she drowned in a nearby river. But all accounts agreed on one thing: Lydia's spirit was bound to the doll. Determined to learn more, Emily tracked down the previous owner, a woman named Margaret. When Emily arrived at Margaret's house, she was met with a frail, elderly woman who refused to meet her eyes. "You shouldn't have taken it," Margaret whispered. "I tried to warn them. But no one listens. Lydia is angry. She feeds on fear and despair." Margaret explained that she had found the doll in her attic years ago, left behind by the house's previous occupants. Since then, her life had been plagued by misfortune: her husband's sudden death, financial ruin, and her deteriorating health. She tried to destroy the doll, but it always reappeared, unscathed. Emily left Margaret's house feeling more terrified than ever. That night, she dreamt of a little girl with sunken eyes and pale skin, clutching the doll and crying, "Why did you leave me?" Emily's dreams grew darker. Every night, she found herself in the same decrepit house, wandering through endless hallways. Lydia's laughter echoed around her, and doors slammed shut as she approached them. During the day, the doll's presence became impossible to ignore. Emily would find it in places she hadn't left it: in the kitchen, on the bathroom counter, even in her car. She tried locking it in a chest, but it always found its way back to her room. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. One night, they formed coherent words: "Stay with me, forever." Emily decided she couldn't take it anymore. She drove to the edge of town, to an abandoned quarry, and hurled the doll into the water. As it sank beneath the surface, she felt a brief moment of relief. But when she returned home, Lydia was waiting for her on the porch, her dress dripping wet. Emily knew she couldn't escape Lydia. She contacted a local paranormal expert, a man named Father Grayson, who specialized in exorcisms and cursed objects. He agreed to visit her house. Father Grayson performed a cleansing ritual, chanting prayers and sprinkling holy water over the doll. At first, nothing happened. Then, the room grew unbearably cold. The lights flickered, and Lydia's laughter filled the air, louder than ever. The doll's eyes glowed red, and a shadowy figure emerged behind it, a spectral form of the little girl. Her face twisted in rage. "She's mine," the spirit screamed, lunging at Emily. Father Grayson shouted an incantation, and the figure dissolved into smoke. The doll fell to the ground, lifeless. "Is it over?" Emily asked, trembling. Father Grayson shook his head. "Spirits like Lydia don't move on easily. You must keep the doll locked away, in a place where it can't harm anyone." Emily followed his advice, sealing the doll in a metal box and burying it deep in the woods. 4 weeks. Her life returned to normal. But late at night, she sometimes heard faint whispers and the distant sound of a child's laughter. Months later, a young couple hiking in the woods stumbled upon a metal box. Curiosity got the better of them, and they pried it open. Inside, they found a porcelain doll with cracked features and haunting blue eyes. "What a beautiful antique," the woman said, brushing dirt off its dress. The man frowned. "It's creepy. Let's leave it." But the woman was already tucking it into her backpack, unaware of the terror that awaited them. Lydia had found her next victims. Story 3, The Curse of Elysia. When Nora stumbled across an antique auction on a gloomy November evening, she hadn't expected to find much of interest. As a collector of rare curiosities, she had a knack for finding beauty in the odd and forgotten. Yet, among the dusty relics and fading portraits, one object stood out, a porcelain doll with piercing blue eyes, hair of golden curls, and a crimson dress trimmed in lace. The auctioneer, an elderly man with trembling hands, seemed reluctant to present the doll. His voice quivered as he spoke of its mysterious origin, claiming it came from the estate of a reclusive woman rumored to have been a practitioner of the occult. The doll, named Elysia, was said to have brought tragedy to its previous owners. Despite the eerie tales, Nora's fascination outweighed her hesitation. The doll was hers for a mere $40. That night, she placed Elysia on a shelf in her living room, where it sat motionless, yet disturbingly lifelike. The first night Elysia stayed in Nora's home, nothing unusual happened. But on the second night, she awoke to a faint sound, a soft whispering that seemed to emanate from the living room. Clutching a flashlight, Nora crept down the stairs. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock. Elysia sat where Nora had left her. Yet something was off. The doll's head, once tilted slightly to the right, now faced forward, staring directly at the staircase. Brushing it off as her imagination, Nora returned to bed. But as the nights passed, the whispers grew louder. Sometimes they sounded like soft giggles, other times they were murmurs in an incomprehensible language. Nora began to feel watched, even during the day. One afternoon, while cleaning, Nora accidentally knocked Elysia from the shelf. The doll fell face down, and a sharp crack echoed through the room. Panic surged as she picked it up, fearing she had damaged the porcelain. To her relief, the doll appeared unscathed. But that night, Nora's dreams were filled with vivid, horrifying images. She saw herself trapped in a dark, suffocating space, unable to scream as Elysia's blue eyes glowed in the shadows. When she woke, claw marks marred her arms, marks she couldn't explain. From that point on, the activity escalated. Doors slammed on their own, mirrors shattered without reason, and the once faint whispers turned into chilling screams that echoed through the house. Desperate for answers, Nora researched Elysia's origins. She discovered a grim history. Each of the doll's previous owners had either vanished mysteriously or died under gruesome circumstances. One journal entry from a victim read, "Elysia is not a doll. She is a vessel, a key to something far darker." Determined to rid herself of the doll, Nora contacted a local occult expert, Father Marcus. The grizzled priest agreed to perform a cleansing ritual but warned that such entities were often resistant. "It's not just a doll," he explained. "It's a fragment of something malevolent." The ritual began at midnight. Candles flickered as Marcus chanted ancient incantations. At first, Elysia remained still. But as the chant grew louder, the doll began to move. Its head turned toward Marcus, and a guttural voice erupted from its tiny frame. "You cannot banish what does not wish to leave." The room plunged into chaos. The candles extinguished, leaving only the faint glow of Elysia's eyes. A violent force flung Marcus across the room, knocking him unconscious. Nora could only watch in terror as the doll slowly turned its gaze toward her. With Marcus incapacitated, Nora had no choice but to act. She grabbed the doll and ran to the fireplace, determined to burn it. As the flames roared, Elysia screamed, a sound so inhuman it shook the walls. The fire consumed the doll. Yet the malevolent presence didn't fade. Instead, it intensified. Shadows coalesced into a humanoid figure, its hollow eyes burning with hatred. It whispered one word, mine. Nora fled the house, leaving everything behind. When she returned with the authorities the next day, the house was in ruins, as if a tornado had torn through it. Of Elysia, there was no trace, only a charred mark on the floor where the doll had burned. Months later, in a distant town, a young girl named Emily found an antique doll at a flea market. It was pristine, with piercing blue eyes and a crimson dress. The seller claimed it was a rare find, though they knew little of its history. Emily's parents bought it without hesitation. That night, as the girl fell asleep, the whispers began anew.